My parents replaced me with my sister, forced me to pay all their bills, so I finally cut them off and watched their lives fall apart. I'm a 34-year-old male who grew up in Portland and currently works in tech sales. I've always been the family backup. And my dad, a 59-year-old man, believes that yelling equals leadership. My mom, a 56-year-old woman, is the perpetual peacekeeper who never stands up to him. My sister Jenna, a 31-year-old female, was the golden child who somehow never had to grow up. She could bat her eyelashes and get out of chores while I was out mowing lawns in the rain. When our parents got screwed in the 2009 housing crash, I was just starting my career at a mid-sized tech company selling software solutions to healthcare providers. The pay wasn't great, but it was stable. I was sharing an apartment with 2 other guys and trying to pay down my student loans. Then came the call from my dad saying they might lose the house. It started small, just helping with groceries or bills when they were short $100 here, covering the electric bill there. No big deal, right? But then it escalated. I ended up co-signing for Jenna's car when she got divorced from her loser ex. Family helps family, right? My parents kept saying it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. That was 8 years ago. Before I knew it, I was subsidizing their entire lives while busting my ass for over 60 hours a week at a job I barely liked. I was on calls at 6 o'clock in the morning with clients in New York, and then dealing with West Coast accounts until 7 o'clock in the evening. I literally installed a mini fridge next to my desk because I didn't have time for a lunch break most days. 5 years in, I was sending them nearly $3,800 a month, $1,600 for their mortgage, $420 for utilities, $375 for Jenna's car payment, $300 for her kids' activities, $75 for streaming services, $210 for cell phones, and even $400 for DoorDash, because it was hard for them to get to the store with the kids. Meanwhile, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Miami, sharing walls with college kids because it was all I could afford while bankrolling their lives in Portland. I tried bringing it up a few times. I asked my dad if he'd look for work. He'd go off about his back problems and how nobody wants to hire someone his age. I asked my mom if she could pick up some part-time hours somewhere. She'd tear up and say she needed to be available for Jenna's kids. I asked Jenna about jobs, and she'd talk about how hard it is to find childcare, even though our parents live with her. Jenna's parenting is a freaking joke. She has the attention span of a goldfish with ADHD when it comes to her kids. I remember last Thanksgiving when her daughter had a fever of 102. Jenna was too busy posting bathroom selfies to notice. Mom ended up taking care of her while Jenna went out that night for mental health reasons. When I pointed out that maybe staying home with your sick kid should be a priority, my dad literally said, "Your sister has a lot on her plate. She's a single mom." Yeah. So are plenty of women who don't abandon their feverish kids to go do shots with their equally useless friends. One time, I FaceTimed them unannounced. Her 4-year-old was teetering on a chair trying to reach peanut butter while she scrolled on her phone on the couch. The kid nearly face-planted, and she didn't even flinch. When I called her out, she laughed and said, "He's got to learn things sometime. He's 4. Meanwhile, she'd been texting all week about needing money for the kids' winter clothes while sporting a fresh manicure that definitely didn't come from a DIY kit. Every conversation ended the same way, with me feeling like the bad guy for even asking. So I stopped asking, just kept paying, and watched my 30s slip away while they lived in a house I was paying for. It all came to a head with a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday last December. I was half asleep when my phone started buzzing. Seeing my dad's name pop up made my stomach drop immediately. With him, it's never just a "Hey, how's life?" call. It's always some emergency or quick favor that ends up costing me hundreds. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. He got straight to the point, asking if I could come to Portland for Christmas. He said the whole family would be together, and it would mean a lot to him. His voice was even a bit softer than usual, which immediately set off alarm bells. "Your mom misses you," he said, "and Jenna's kids keep asking when Uncle's coming to visit." That part probably wasn't a lie. My niece, a 6-year-old girl, and nephew, a 4-year-old boy, are good kids despite everything. They're pretty much the only reason I still picked up the phone at all. "I know it's last minute," he continued, "but we really want you here. Family Christmas, you know, like the old times." Against my better judgment, I said yes. I went ahead and booked an expensive flight to Portland, $197 round trip, thanks to holiday pricing. I dropped everything at work and even bought gifts for everyone. I also got a rental car, even though Dad said not to bother. An extra $340. I didn't need to spend. I've learned the hard way that relying on them for transportation means being stuck on their schedule. I should have known something was up when my dad didn't argue about the dates, didn't ask about my flight details, and didn't even offer to pick me up from the airport. He just seemed relieved that I'd said yes and ended the call quickly. Still, like an idiot, I thought maybe they actually wanted to spend time with me. Maybe this time would be different. As soon as I stepped out of PDX, I got hit with that heavy, wet Portland rain. I waited almost 20 minutes for my Uber because of holiday traffic, and the ride to their place felt longer than the flight itself. When we finally pulled up, I noticed the yard was a mess. Overgrown grass, random toys scattered everywhere, one of those cheap plastic slides tipped over in the mud. I had to step over a rusty bike and some kind of deflated pool toy just to get to the front door. When I finally knocked, I was expecting, I don't know, maybe a smile, a thank you, a hug, some acknowledgement that I just flew 3,000 miles to see them. Nope. My dad opened the door, looked at me for 2 seconds, and then hit me with, "You're going to babysit Jenna's kids. We're going on a family vacation." No hug, not even a damn hello. I stood there, dripping on the welcome mat, trying to process what he just said. A family vacation not including me? Just then, Jenna showed up behind him, holding a duffel bag and looking way too excited. Her 2 little ones were already in their coats, tracking mud all over the entryway. She smirked and told the kids, "Don't snot on your uncle." All started laughing. Even my mom joined in from the kitchen like this was some hilarious moment. The entryway smelled like wet dog, even though they don't have one. And there was crap everywhere, toys, shoes. Mail piled up on that same damn table they've had since I was in high school. But the kids were bouncing around, clearly hyped. Up on sugar. My niece had chocolate smeared across her cheek and was clutching some kind of stuffed unicorn, missing an eye. My nephew was wearing mismatched rain boots and kept jumping in place, splashing more mud on my already soaked jeans. Mom emerged from the kitchen with a travel mug, explaining they were going to a resort in Bend for the week. Beautiful place in the mountains. They have a spa and everything, she said. And you'll have the house to yourself, Jenna added, like this was some kind of bonus. Just need you to watch the kids. They're on winter break from school. My dad was already loading suitcases into their SUV, the one I helped them buy last year when their old car died. The one I'm pretty sure I was still making payments on. It was surreal, like I was watching a movie of my own life. I just spent nearly $1,000 on a last-minute flight. Took time off work during our busiest season, all because they guilted me into coming home for Christmas, and they were leaving. I stood there with my suitcase still in hand as they continued packing the car. Like I should be grateful for the opportunity to babysit while they went on vacation. My mom must have noticed my expression because she paused and said, "Oh, there's plenty of food in the fridge, and the kids' schedules are on the whiteboard in the kitchen." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a last-minute plan. This was the plan all along. They never wanted me home for Christmas. They wanted a free babysitter so they could go and have fun. I didn't yell. I didn't have to. I just laid it all out, every single thing I'd done for them, every bill I paid, every time I covered Jenna's credit card debt, every lie I told my landlord when I needed to break my lease early because they needed money for emergency home repairs, which turned out to be for a new TV. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You called me, asked me to come home for the holidays, made me book an expensive last-minute flight, and now you're all going on vacation while I babysit. My dad paused. It's just for a week. We never get to do anything nice for ourselves. Never get to. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The audacity was breathtaking. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Let's talk about that. Last month, I sent you $1,650 for the mortgage, $420 for utilities, $375 for Jenna's car payment, $300 for the kids' activities, $210 for everyone, phone bills, and about $400. For food delivery, that's over $30,000. And that doesn't even include the extra $500 Jenna asked for when her car needed repairs. Their faces changed. My mom looked at the floor. Jenna suddenly got very interested in zipping and unzipping her jacket. And my dad's expression hardened. We're family, he said, as if that explained everything. Family helps family. Funny how that only goes one way, I replied. They thought I was just blowing off steam, complaining, venting like always. Figured I'd grumble, suck it up, and play house for a week while they got massages and bent. So I hit them with the first card. I quit my job last week. That's when Jenna started screaming like I just confessed to murder. My dad lost it so fast, he knocked over the coat rack. My mom had her hands in the air, as if she could somehow undo the last 5 years with a single gesture. You what? My dad bellowed. How could you be so irresponsible? What about our bills? Your bills, I corrected him, not mine. And I didn't. Jesquitai took a new job. Better company, better pay. But there's a catch. I have to be in the office. No more remote work options. I let that sink in. No more remote work meant no more flying out at a moment's notice. No more being at their beck and call. So what are you saying? Jenna asked. Her voice suddenly small. I'm saying I'm done being your wallet. The new job barely covers my expenses, especially with the cost of living in Miami. There's nothing left to send your way. When I told them I wasn't staying to watch the kids, it didn't register right away. They just stood there, blinking, waiting for me to say I was joking. I wasn't. You guys go ahead to your resort, I said, pulling out my phone again. I'll be staying at a hotel downtown. But the kids, ... double quotes, Jenna started. Your responsibility. I finished for her, not mine. My dad stepped toward me, finger pointed at my chest. Now listen here. No, you listen. I cut him off. For once in your life, just listen. Then I dropped the next bomb. I told them the resort reservation was gone, canceled 3 days ago and fully refunded to the credit card. The surprise I had paid for a few months back as a gift when Dad mentioned wanting a getaway. He hadn't noticed because he stopped opening his own statements years ago. My name was on all the accounts. I'd set them up that way to help with their credit after the foreclosure scare. Jenna laughed at first, like I was bluffing. Then she pulled up the resorts app on her phone, and her face turned pale as the confirmation disappeared before her eyes. My mom looked over her shoulder, blinking a few times, then started asking questions nobody could answer. How is this possible? Jenna whispered. Same way I've been paying your bills for years, I explained. With my money, my accounts, my credit cards that you all seem to think have unlimited funds. Then came the airline part. I told them the flights had been rerouted, no refunds. That would have been too easy. I had the credit transferred to my own name under an account I'd opened months ago, planning for this exact moment. You can't do that. My dad sputtered. That's our vacation. No, I corrected him again. It's a vacation I paid for, which means it's my vacation, and I decided to cancel it. My dad screamed, "This is fraud." I reminded him it wasn't fraud if the card was in my name. All those upgrades and bills, he hadn't paid anything in a year. The whole house, groceries, Jenna's car payments hit, all went through me. He just signed his name and took the credit. But the highlight was what I plopped on the table next. Just a folded letter from Chase Bank. A polite reminder that the automatic mortgage payments had been stopped 3 weeks ago. I'd stopped paying. On the house. I wanted to see how long it would take them to notice. They didn't. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee, and their faces looked like they just watched their winning lottery ticket get shredded. I'm not going to lie, it felt good. Years of being treated like an open wallet, and finally, I was closing it. "You can't do this to us," my mom said, tears in her eyes. "We're your family." "Family doesn't treat each other like this," I replied. "Family doesn't lie and manipulate to get what they want." "It wasn't a lie," Jenna protested weakly. "We did want you here for Christmas." As a babysitter, I reminded her, not as a brother or son. My dad was pacing now, running his hands through his thinning hair. "So what? You're just going to let the bank take our house? Let us end up on the street? Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said slowly, making sure each word landed, "is for you all to take responsibility for your own lives. Get jobs, pay your own bills, and stop treating me like an endless resource you can tap whenever you want." The living room fell silent. The room was silent except for the kids who had moved on to fighting over a toy in the corner. My nephew started crying, and no one moved to comfort him. They were all too shocked by what was happening. I had been planning this for months. I continued, "I've got spreadsheets tracking every dollar I've given you over the past 5 years. It's over $175,000. Do you understand that I could have bought my own house, started a family, invested in my future? Instead, I've been investing in yours. And you can't even be bothered to say thank you when I walk through the door." Jenna's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and then looked even more panicked. "The hotel just sent a cancellation confirmation," she whispered. "Yep," I nodded. "I called them this morning." As Jenna began walking in circles, trying to call the resort, the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Nobody was expecting visitors except me. I had planned this down to the hour. I told them to relax. It wasn't the bank. Not yet. My dad opened the door, and then walked a tall woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a badge around her neck. She introduced herself as Marissa from Child Protective Services. Jenna's face went completely white. "You see," I explained. "I called CPS 3 weeks ago and told them what I had seen during our last video call. The kids left alone in the backyard without coats. One crying while Jenna smoked on the porch, scrolling through her phone. I had screenshots with dates and times. The time my nephew fell and got a bloody nose while Jenna was inside taking a nap. The time my niece had what looked like cigarette burns on her stuffed animals. CPS had opened a silent file, and now they were here for a home visit. I gave Marissa a polite smile and told her I was the uncle in town for the holidays. I offered to show her the kitchen, refrigerator, and nursery. Jenna just stood there, frozen, clutching her useless plane tickets. "We've received some concerning reports," Marissa explained, her voice professional but kind. "I'm just here to check in and see how everyone's doing." "We're fine," my dad said immediately, trying to block her view of the living room. "Just having a family discussion." "I can see that," she replied, glancing at the suitcases by the door. "Were you planning on going somewhere?" "Vacation," my mom said quickly. "But we're reconsidering." Marissa nodded and asked if she could come in and look around. My dad hesitated, but she reminded him that she could come back with a court order if necessary. He stepped aside. The house told the whole story. The kitchen sink was piled high with dishes, empty energy drink cans cluttered the counter, and there was peanut butter smeared on the wall by the dining table. When Marissa asked to see where the children slept, I stepped aside and let her see for herself. The kids' room was worse than I remembered from my last visit. Clothes were everywhere, sheets that clearly hadn't been washed in weeks, and a sippy cup of what used to be milk was now growing something fuzzy and green. The bathroom had black mold in the corners of the shower, and the medicine cabinet was unlocked, with prescription bottles within easy reach of small hands. I noticed something I had missed before: a crack in the window covered with duct tape, letting cold air seep in. No wonder my niece had been coughing on our last video call. The room was freezing. Jenna tried to flip the switch. Suddenly, the concerned mother she claimed to be said she hadn't had time to clean because they were packing. She insisted she always left detailed instructions and would never go on vacation without making sure her kids were safe. She claimed I had agreed to everything months ago. I didn't react. I just looked at Marissa. She asked if I had any messages or texts from Jenna confirming I would watch the kids. I pulled out my phone and handed it to her. Jenna's last message was from 2 days ago. Can you pick up some shampoo from Miami? The kind you bought me last time? Nothing about babysitting, just another demand as usual. I caught my dad's eye across the room. For the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not anger, not disappointment, but genuine fear. He was watching his house of cards collapse in real time, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Marissa took notes on her clipboard and asked a few more questions about the children's routines, medical care, and school attendance. Jenna stumbled through her answers, contradicting herself several times. My parents tried to jump in and cover for her, but it only made things worse. So you're saying you supervise the children when your daughter is unavailable? Marissa asked my mom. Yes, of course, my mom replied. But you were about to leave them with their uncle for a week while you all went on vacation. My mom faltered. Well, he's very responsible, she finally said. I saw Marissa writing something down. And Mr. Stevens, she turned to my dad, are you employed currently? The color drained from his face. I have some back problems that make it difficult to work. Are you on disability then? She pressed. While working on that. Paperwork. Marissa made another note and asked, and who provides the primary financial support for this household? Everyone looked at me, and I just shrugged. I've been helping out, I said, purposely vague, but I've recently changed jobs. So, that's coming to an end. The rest of the inspection went as well as you'd expect. Marissa checked the fridge nearly empty except for condiments and some expired yogurt. She asked about smoke detectors. One was chirping from a low battery, and she observed the children, who were clearly not used to regular routines or discipline. By the time she finished, Jenna was in tears, not the manipulative kind she usually used to get her way, but real, scared tears. My mom was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands, and my dad was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Marissa handed them a checklist of what needed to be fixed and warned that she'd be back in 48 hours for a follow-up. She suggested some resources for parenting classes and job assistance programs. Then she left, but not before giving me her card and asking me to call if I had any other concerns. After she left, I picked up my suitcase. They didn't stop me. Not one of them asked me to stay. I told my dad I'd crash at their place for 2 nights until I could get into my new apartment. I said it like any normal person would, no smugness, just a statement. He looked at me as if I had personally attacked him and said no. He said I wasn't welcome anymore and that I'd humiliated them. If you think you're better than us, you can prove it from somewhere else, he said, his voice trembling with rage. After everything you've done, he said, you think you can just stay here under my roof? I almost laughed at the irony. His roof, the one I'd been paying for. I looked at my mom. She didn't say a word. Jenna was still hiding with the kids. It was exactly what I expected. They'd used me for as long as they could, and now that I wasn't playing along, I was disposable. So I nodded, didn't argue, just picked up my barely unzipped suitcase and walked out. No dramatic exit. No big speech, just a guy leaving. A house that never really belonged to him. Then I drove to my new place, the one they didn't even know existed. It was a 1-bedroom downtown condo, 12th floor, with a view of the city I'd grown up in but never really enjoyed. It was clean, minimal, and fully paid for. I had been planning this move for over a year, quietly, while still wiring them money. 6 months ago, I made a decision. Instead of sending them extra money when they asked, which was constantly, I started setting it aside. I opened a separate account they knew nothing about and began building up a safety net for myself. Not for them. I found a real estate agent who helped me purchase a foreclosure that I could get for a steal. I used every penny I'd saved to buy it outright. No mortgage, no loan, no monthly payment, just mine. The place still smelled like fresh paint. The floors were cold, the fridge empty, and there were no sheets on the bed. But it was mine. Nobody else had the keys. I put my suitcase in the closet and stood there for a moment, hearing nothing. No TV blaring, no kids screaming, no one asking for a favor or a loan or just a little help until payday. For the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights, and felt something weird in my chest. It took me a minute to realize it was relief, pure, unfiltered relief. The next day, I went shopping. I bought groceries, sheets, towels, a decent coffee maker, all the stuff you need when you're starting over. I spent the afternoon setting up my place, arranging furniture, and hanging a few pictures to make it feel like home. My phone had been blowing up with texts and calls since I left. I ignored most of them. They all followed the same pattern: anger, threats, guilt, bargaining, classic manipulation tactics. From my dad, "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." From my mom, "Please call us. We need to figure this out." From Jenna, "The kids are crying. They don't understand why Uncle left." That last one almost got to me. Almost. But then I remembered how quickly they'd been ready to dump those same kids on me while they went on vacation. I realized those tears were being weaponized against me again. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb and focused on setting up my new life. The next morning, I received a text from Jenna asking if she could come over alone. She said she wanted to apologize, and for some reason, I said, sure. Maybe because, of all of them, she was the only one who seemed capable of change. Or maybe I just wanted closure. I gave her the address, but told her she had 1 hour, not a minute more. When she showed up, she looked different, smaller somehow. Hair in a messy bun, no makeup, no phone, constantly in hand. When she got in, she started ... Looking around the apartment, she said, "This is really nice." I didn't thank her. I simply gestured to the couch and asked if she wanted coffee. She nodded, and I noticed her hands were shaking. "How long have you had this place?" she asked as I handed her a mug. "Closed on it 3 months ago," I replied. "Been setting it up, little by little." "And you never said anything? Would it have mattered? Would you have been happy for me? Or would you have figured out a way to use it for yourself?" She didn't answer. She just stared into her coffee. Then she started talking without the drama and manipulation. She apologized for everything, for planning to dump the kids on me, for acting like I wasn't doing enough, for every time she texted asking for money, like it was nothing. She even apologized for laughing when I walked in the door. "We got used to you fixing everything," she admitted. "Mom and Dad expected it. I expected it. It felt normal until you stopped playing along." I told her I appreciated the apology, but I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. That apologizing wouldn't fix anything unless she really changed. "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I applied for a job yesterday. That surprised me." "What kind of job?" "Nothing fancy. Receptionist at a dentist's office. But it's something. They said I could start next week if my references check out." "That's good," I said, meaning it. "What about the kids?" "Mom's going to watch them during my shifts. Dad's looking into some handyman work, nothing permanent, but it's a start." I nodded, not wanting to get my hopes up. They'd made promises before. Before she left, she mentioned that she and the kids were staying at a Motel 6 and that she was thinking about getting her own place. Once she had some paychecks under her belt, she sounded serious. I told her she should, that it would be good for the kids to have their own space. She hesitated at the door. "CPS is coming back tomorrow," Marisa said. "We need to clean up the house, get some groceries, fix the smoke detector." "I don't suppose?" I shook my head. "No more bailouts, Jenna. You all need to figure this out yourselves." She nodded, disappointed but not surprised. "Worth a shot," she said with a sad smile before she left, closing the door. Softly behind her, that night, I got a voicemail from my dad from an unknown number. "If you think this is over, you're dumber than I thought. You want to embarrass this family? You'll see how that feels." But I was already ahead of him. The next morning, I visited the mortgage lender and officially removed my name from everything associated with the house. I didn't want it repossessed. I wanted them to own all of its late payments, the rising interest, the phone calls from collections. I logged into my bank account and reversed 3 scheduled transfers. Groceries, phone plan, and Jenna's car insurance all canceled with 2 clicks. It felt like cutting the last strings of a puppet I had been dancing for years. I forwarded my dad's threatening voicemail to my lawyer friend, who advised me to document everything in case things escalated. I changed the passwords on all my accounts, set up credit monitoring to make sure they couldn't open anything in my name, and blocked his number for the next week. The messages kept coming, oscillating between rage and desperation. My mom sent a photo of an empty fridge with "just please" as the caption. My dad had a buddy of his call me to say I was killing them slowly by cutting them off. Jenna sent screenshots of past conversations where I promised to always be there for the kids. What they didn't know was that 3 months ago, I had quietly filed a report with a government housing program about how my money was subsidizing their lives while the children were neglected. And yesterday, while they were still arguing about who should call me first, they received a formal review of their eligibility for child support programs, housing assistance, and disability benefits. A letter that started with "We regret to inform you" and ended with "subject to investigation." Jenna texted me at 10:23 in the evening with just one word. Why? I ignored her because they had brought me across the country to babysit their mess. And all I did was give it back to them one piece at a time. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new life. I got the internet set up, bought a decent TV, and started cooking actual meals instead of just grabbing whatever was fastest after a long day of work. I even joined a local gym. It turns out that when you're not constantly stressed about where the next financial emergency is coming from, you have the energy for things like taking care of yourself. My boss called to check in, surprised that I was actually taking the full week off. "Everything okay with the family?" he asked. I told him things had changed, but I was good, better than good. Actually, I hadn't spoken to my college friends in ages. I didn't have to pretend that everything was fine. I didn't have to mediate any fights, just peace. It's been a month now. Life is quieter. My apartment feels lived in. My things are where I want them. I wake up without that knot of fear in my chest when I see certain names on my phone. Last week, I received a letter with no return address, just my name and my mom's handwriting. Inside was a check for $750 and a note that said, "We're doing all we can. I haven't cashed it yet. I'm waiting to see if the effort continues, if it's real or just temporary guilt." Janice kept her word. Surprisingly, she's now working full-time. At that dentist's office, she sent a photo of her kids smiling in a real living room, a rug, a couch, and coloring books spread out. No chaos, no tension behind their eyes like before. She's renting a small 2-bedroom apartment in a different part of town. My parents are still at the house, but they're both working part-time now. Dad, doing maintenance at an apartment complex. It turns out his back isn't that bad when it's the only option. Mom is cleaning houses. We don't talk directly, just short messages. That's all I want right now. I'm not ready for more. Maybe someday, but not yet. As for my dad, nothing. Not a text, not a whisper. People like him don't apologize. They wait for the world to bend back to them. I don't bend anymore. I got a promotion at work and started hitting the gym 4 times a week. It turns out when you're not pouring your life savings into someone else's endless pit of needs, you can actually build something for yourself. Yesterday, I ran into Marissa from CPS at a coffee shop downtown. She recognized me and asked how I was doing. I told her things were better, much better. She smiled and said she was glad to hear it and that the family was making progress too. She mentioned that follow-up visits showed real improvement. The house was clean. The kids were in a routine, and there was actual food in the fridge. Your sister mentions you sometimes, she said. I think she misses you. Maybe that's true. Maybe I miss parts of them too. The potential of what we could have been as a family if money and manipulation hadn't poisoned everything. Sometimes, I think about what would have happened if I had just played along that day, if I'd watched those kids and let them go on vacation. Then I remind myself it wouldn't have been just that day. It would have been every day forever. Edit. Thanks for the awards and support. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, the kids are safe. CPS is still monitoring the situation, but things are improving. 2. No, I haven't talked to my dad since that day and don't plan to. 3. Yes, I kept all the presents I bought. Them lolled. Hey Reddit. So it's been 3 months since I walked out of my parents' house and told them to start fending for themselves. Remember my father's threats after that? Turns out the dude wasn't bluffing. 2 weeks ago, my bank's fraud department called. Someone tried to wire $12,000 to an offshore account using my information. They blocked it, but when I checked my credit report, I saw 6 hard inquiries from loan applications I never filed. Someone was trying to rack up massive debt in my name. I was just the warm-up. Next, this genius created a Gmail with my full name and started emailing my clients, claiming I was stealing company data and selling it to competitors. 3 clients contacted my company before I even knew what was happening. I got pulled into an emergency call with legal. Thankfully, my boss had my back, but I still spent 48 hours doing damage control. That's when I stopped reacting and started handling it. I hired a lawyer, and it took us 2 days to trace everything back to my dad. The idiot used his own devices and even listed his personal email as recovery for the fake accounts. Pure boomer. Villain, and that was it. I pressed charges: identity theft, fraud, and defamation. Yesterday, police showed up at my parents' house with a warrant and seized every device there. He's facing potential jail time now. Mom's been blowing up my phone, begging me to drop the charges. Jenna surprisingly just said, "Do what you need to do," and left it at that. I think she finally sees how far off the rails the old man's gone. I'm not dropping anything. He tried to destroy my credit and get me fired, all because I stopped being his safety net. The court date is next month, and my lawyer says it's a slam dunk case. I've also frozen my credit, changed banks, and installed security cameras at my place, not taking any chances. Thanks for all the support.